So you may not have noticed, but there have been a few developments on inheritance tax, particularly recently, and you may well have picked this up in the press, but a little bit before that, and it just didn't get the light of day that it perhaps deserved because of the preoccupation with Brexit and leadership contests and all of that. And I've referenced it before, and it's the Office of Tax Simplification proposals for inheritance tax. So I won't go over those again. They are there. The OTS is a Treasury body. One might expect the government to look at those, and we might see some news of the development, or at least the reaction to those proposals in this year's budget, or maybe not, we don't know. But what we've seen more recently is the recommendations of the, and now I need to think a bit carefully about this before I say it, it's the All Party Parliamentary Group for Intergenerational and Inheritance Reform. There, the APPGIIF. Who knew they even existed? But they do. And they've made some recommendations. They are actually quite radical. It's driven by a view, and it's probably quite a reasonable one, that the estates at the very top end of the wealth spectrum have great opportunities to reduce their estates, to plan, to get money into relievable vehicles, particularly business relievable vehicles. And so the effective rate of tax that they pay is much, much, much lower than 40%. And that's okay, it's all legitimate planning, etc. But it does mean, by comparison, those with assets that they can't more readily plan with, you know, their main residence, property basically, and even some investments, bit more difficult to do something about. The effective rate of tax that they pay on, albeit a smaller estate, is higher. So the aim here is to say, the underlying principle is, why don't we widen the tax base and reduce the tax rate and simplify the tax? So the proposals, in a nutshell, this is contained in a 40-odd page set of recommendations, so they've given some thought to it, are these. It's a 10% rate of inheritance tax. Everyone's, oh, that sounds good, and it is. It's, you know, much, much lower than 40%. But it moves up to 20% for estates more than £2 million. So a bit more detail required here. Is there a nil rate ban? Yeah, but it's called a death rate, a death allowance. £325,000 of the estate passing on death will be subject to a zero rate of tax. The spouse exemption and the charity exemption still exist. Once your estate passing on death exceeds £2 million, the taxable bit, i.e. the bit over and above 325,000, then it seems you will pay a 20% rate on the bit that's over 2 million, 10% up to that. How about lifetime gifts? Well, the gifting situation we have now is you can make gifts and they could be exempt if they're normal expenditure out of income, if they're within the £3,000 allowance. Proposal here is, and it's aligned to the OTS proposal, actually, a single lifetime gift allowance, annual lifetime gift allowance. Except they put a number on it, and the number is £30,000. So every year you could give up to £30,000 free of inheritance tax. Over and above that, then you'll pay a 10% rate on the gift that you make. You'll pay the appropriate inheritance tax rate on the gift that you make, but it will be less than 40, i.e. 10 or 20. So that's what's proposed in relation to lifetime gifts. Anything else? Well, yeah, if we're going to have a lower rate of tax and a simplified system, we might as well just get rid of all the relief. So business relief would go, agricultural relief would go. All of your pensions would be treated as part of your estate under these proposals, because when it's subject to tax, it is a lower rate, so it's only fair. Also, and there's an alignment here with the OTS proposals, is the removal of rebasing for capital gains tax, and that's uniformly across everything, so not conditional on what you're leaving being relieved from inheritance tax as well, which is the OTS proposal. If an asset is free of inheritance tax because of, say, the spouse exemption, charity, business relief, then you don't get the CGT rebasing. That's the OTS proposal. The APPGIIF proposal is that you just wouldn't get rebasing on anything. So you would get a lower inheritance tax rate, but you wouldn't have the rebasing of your assets for CGT on death. And that, broadly, I've probably missed a few things out, but that's broadly what's proposed. Will it come to pass? Who knows? The Treasury have made a simple statement. We receive all recommendations like this and consider them, and that's broadly it. The head of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, Paul Johnson, has recently said that inheritance tax, amongst other things, inheritance tax isn't or is no longer fit for purpose. So that adds a little bit of fuel to the fire of let's have a bit of change. Whether we see those changes or not, I don't know. This is merely to inform you of those two dynamics, one driven by the Office of Tax Simplification, which has been around for a while now. Government just haven't got around to looking at it, but now they might. And the more recent APPGIIF proposals, which are obviously more radical, and the comment made by the Institute of Fiscal Studies. So there we are, you're up to date, hopefully. Go ahead and read the document, if you will. We've made what I think is a really good bulletin summarising the proposed changes on TechLink with a link directly to the full document if you are so inclined to go and read it. So go to TechLink to get more up to date. Stay with TechLink to keep up to date.